Hello everyone, welcome. I wanted to do a video on addiction and the Ascension process. So the way I look at my now moments is through a much higher perspective. So anything that I'm going through, I'm always looking at it from a perspective above the third dimension. So what I'm about to share is a way to look at addiction, understand addiction, and move through addictions from a higher perspective, which is not to say that the conventional ways of dealing with addiction are not good or right. They're very important to move into or participate in if you're resonating with it, right? So all the different programs that are out there, all the different groups you can join. I mean, there's a gamut of things, right, that can assist you, inpatient, outpatient programs, whatever that it may be, right? And they're all beautiful. But this video is going to be about how to look at, understand, and move through addictions from a higher perspective, okay? So let's first talk about what is an addiction, right? An addiction is a behavior that you do consciously or unconsciously that is not necessarily for your highest good. You know, overeating, shopping, binging and purging, drinking, smoking, drugs, sex, television, right? I mean, it can be anything that is a behavior you're doing that feels as if it's out of your control, as if something else is kind of driving that behavior. And typically it's behaviors that deep down when we become conscious of it, we don't want to be doing. So how did we start these behaviors? Where did they come from? Some of us may understand where and some of us may not, but on an energetic level, let me describe addiction. So you have external experiences in your life, right? There's an experience that you have, and it's a conscious exchange. So let's just say it's an argument between somebody. It's a breakup that you had that was really, really challenging. It was an actual physical fight that you had with somebody. Maybe it was a traumatic experience you had when you were growing up where you were abused mentally, physically, sexually, right? There's all these external circumstances that happen. And it's a consciousness that is being exchanged. And then that consciousness that creates that experience moves into your physical body. It moves into your channel so that you can digest and understand that external circumstance, that external experience, because everything is energy. So these experiences are consciousness, it's energy. And when it moves in, depending upon what kind of experience that was, it's either moved through or it is ignored or only processed halfway, meaning felt, seen, understood halfway, maybe a third, maybe a fifth. It really depends on how intense that experience is and how much you want to actually acknowledge and experience and go through, right? So when we are having these experiences, one of the ways in which we deal with intense emotional experiences, experiences that create sort of uncomfortable feelings, uncomfortable thoughts, right? Uncomfortable beliefs, things that we don't like to feel. What we do is we figure out a way to ignore it, block it, deny it, numb it, and not feel it. So we will distract ourselves with other behaviors to make us feel better, right? We don't consciously necessarily choose these behaviors, which end up turning into addictions. Some of us may. Some of us say, oh, I am now going to start eating a ton of food in order to ignore the fact that I am in a heartbreak right now, right? We learn as we are going through life that these behaviors actually assist us in not feeling. Right? It's like, oh, wow, when I do this, I don't feel. Now, again, this can be very unconscious, but it's like when I do this, I don't feel anything from the external that's being digested into me as consciousness that I don't want to feel. I would much rather numb out, right? And so what happens is that we start to create these behaviors that become habits. They become natural ways that we begin to be when we are navigating this third dimensional consciousness. And these behaviors create thought patterns. The thought patterns tell our body and tell our ego, hey, when you are feeling sad, this is what we like to do. These are massively dense thought patterns that are created over time as you are learning unconsciously that when you do these behaviors, you feel better because you're not feeling the consciousness that makes you feel uncomfortable. Does that make sense, right? You are denying and ignoring and numbing consciousness that you're either experiencing in a now moment or consciousness that is in your physical form moving around, right? From a past relationship, from a past divorce, from a past traumatic experience, losing your job, whatever it may be, right? So these thought patterns form. And the thought patterns are really powerful. And so anytime you get triggered, which is any external circumstance that may trigger the dense consciousness that you don't want to feel, right? That you never felt from those previous experiences, these thought patterns are going to kick in like a defense mechanism and say, oh, no. When you start to feel that emotion, we like to do this instead. Remember, we like to do these behaviors, right? And so let's just say, for instance, somebody yells at you or somebody calls you a name or something happens where it triggers a consciousness within you that you never cleared out from a past experience, right, that was traumatic and created this addiction. Addiction doesn't happen overnight, right? It gets piled on. It's like a behavior and then it's an experience and another experience and another experience and the next thing you know, boom. It's very possible that one experience can create an addiction, right? But it's a learned sort of behavior that we have that feels good. So we've got this dense consciousness that was never cleared out because it was uncomfortable. We decided that we were going to move through it or ignore it, deny it, numb it out by doing other behaviors that aren't for our highest good. Those behaviors felt good, so we continued to do those behaviors, and then it became a pattern. It became an addiction. It became something that we no longer can control. We are now being taken over by the thought patterns. Imagine it as a really dense wheel that is holding intense, dense thoughts that are literally controlling you as you are unconsciously moving through your day. So the first thing we do as we start to awaken into these higher states of consciousness and recognize, oh, I've got these addictive behaviors, we remember that everything is energy. And then we start to unravel this addiction, these behaviors and the thought patterns. So first and foremost, we start to come into the body and navigate the consciousness we ignored. What experiences happened from the time I was a baby to this now moment that created traumatic experiences for me? And traumatic experiences can be anything from a fight in a schoolyard to being physically abused or sexually abused, right? Or anything in between. You start recognizing and remembering these experiences, and you start realizing that you never actually perhaps processed that experience. It was too intense for you at whatever age it was happening. So you begin to love that aspect of you, that version of you first and foremost, knowing that you did nothing wrong. You did nothing wrong by not wanting to feel what you didn't want to feel. You did what you knew how to do, which was block it. Numb yourself from it, disassociate, whatever it was you did. And it's okay. But we have to start to acknowledge that. We have to start to honor that. We have to start to see it and feel it and love that aspect of us. That's part of moving through the addiction clearing. We've got to get deeply into our bodies and recognize the consciousness that is coming up, the patterns, the beliefs, the emotions that are all tied to this addiction, which is all tied to external experiences. And you start recognizing, oh my God, I never really processed this breakup. I never really processed this abuse. I never really processed this losing my job and being unemployed for 3 years. I never really processed it. What did I do? I did this instead, right? But you love yourself. You don't get upset with yourself. You don't say, why? Why did I do that? I'm so stupid. I should have never done that. If I had never picked up a marijuana joint, I would never be addicted to marijuana right now, right? All these things that you have to be able to honor your human journey, honor what you chose, honor what you did, which was the best thing that you could do in that moment. Now, once you start recognizing these things and these patterns and these experiences that happen to you, then you start feeling everything that's coming up. If you are an addict of any type, I'm an addict. I'm a really good addict. When you start recognizing that you're an addict, which means that you create behaviors in order to not feel what you have had experienced in a past now, or even in a current now, right? You've learned really great techniques to not feel, right? You have to now start to feel. You have to start to recognize, oh shoot, I've got to feel everything that's coming in now. Because if I don't, I know that I am the type of beautiful human that is going to try to ignore it or maybe create subtle behaviors that are addictive right? Like instead of clearing and processing and feeling sadness, I may go sit and watch TV for 7 hours, right? That's a behavior that at times is okay. But if you are using it as a crutch to not feel what is being asked to come up, it becomes an addiction. So we want to feel everything that's coming up right now, especially if you are used to and prone to addictive behaviors. Then you want to start to focus on what energy center is it stemming from, because all addictions are held. Addictions meaning, imagine addiction, like let's just say you're an alcoholic. And an alcoholic is a consciousness, right? That behavior, the thoughts, the ways of being. It's a consciousness that's held inside one of the energy centers. And it has been created, built up by external circumstances, emotions, thoughts, beliefs, things that have happened to you that you've digested that you never processed completely when they were happening. You were sexually abused by your grandfather. The moment you were sexually abused, you didn't feel what that consciousness was because it was too intense. You blocked it, you numbed it, you stuck it in a little box and moved it into your sacral center, right? And then another abuse happened to you where you were violated. You didn't feel that one. It moved into your consciousness as an emotion, thought, belief, whatever it is, collected into that same addiction, right? And moved in. And then all of a sudden, when you were able to drink, you started drinking, and that drinking allowed you to ignore and forget everything that has ever happened to you, any emotion that wants to come up, right? So these addictive behaviors are in an energy center. So can you start to recognize and trust and listen to where your higher self is directing you? Where is this centered? Where is it? Where did it birth itself? Right? All of my addictions, most of them, are in my sacral center. And so what I've noticed the last couple of years as I've been clearing out so much is that there is an intense amount of emotion clearing in that energy center. And my addictions that I've cleared in the past have been in that energy center, okay? So we want to start to recognize that. We want to start to love that area. We want to start to open that area up more. We want to start to acknowledge that is the room where these addictions are held, and that is the room where all of the traumas are held. Although they're all over the body, right? The mass of it is held there. Then you start to recognize, okay, now as I'm clearing and feeling and loving and doing all of these things, I'm now going to watch in my every now when the thoughts. So this is actually the easy part. The challenging part is when you move up to the mind and you start to deal with the thought patterns. This aspect of the consciousness and the addictive behavior is 1,000 times more challenging to clear than the emotions and the memories and the experiences that are held in the energy centers. All you have to do with that is feel it. This is a whole new ballgame, which is why addictions are so addictive, because they are on a go cycle that is created by an intense thought pattern. So once you start doing all these things, you now want to watch in every single now. You want to get really present in your now. If you're an addict, it is required that you get present and in your body in every now. Because as an addict, you are used to being out of your body, to not feel. Okay, and if you're consciously ascending, you're most likely in your body over and over and over, in the body, in the body, in the body, feeling more, feeling more, feeling more. You're like, Jesus Christ, I've got this addiction, I've got this, I've got that, right? All these things. Being present in your now is going to assist you in recognizing when you're trying to escape. It's going to assist you in recognizing, here comes the thought patterns. We are prone to be unconscious to the thought patterns. They just turn on. We get triggered, they turn on, and we just do what the thought patterns tell us to do. Oh, you now want to go and eat 15 burgers. Oh, you now want to go and drink 3 glasses of wine. Oh, you now want to go and have sex with anybody that you can to not feel, right? Whatever the addiction is, gambling, anything, shopping, right? And then you just do it. It's like you're unconsciously just following the thought patterns. Okay, when you become embodied and aware and conscious, you start to recognize, oh shit, that's the thought pattern. Oh, there's the thought pattern. Oh, there's the thought pattern. Oh, there's the thought pattern. Then you observe it as separate from you. That's an older version of me. 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 Every time you hear and see the thought pattern coming up in your mind, that's an older version of me. This is what's happening. There is literally a splitting of your being, of who you are right now. And if you are consciously, courageously moving out of an addiction, then this is even more obvious to you. Because what is happening is you are recognizing the aspect of you in the addiction that is an older version of you, that has played in this addiction for who knows how many years, or any of the other addictions. You might be substituting one addiction to the next addiction to the next addiction. And there is an aspect of you that is like, we don't do this anymore. And there's a frustration and an anger, right? Like, why are you continuing to do this? You don't do this anymore. And this version, older version of you says, I love doing this. This is what we love to do. What are you talking about? And you've got this battle, right? Lower frequency aspect of you, higher frequency aspect of you. The thought pattern is holding this version of you. So here's what you start to do. You start to recognize, this is an older version of me. This is an older version of me. I am in a higher state of consciousness now. I do not need to follow the thought patterns. And then you make a different choice. You choose. As soon as you become conscious and you observe and you step out of the thought patterns, you then have the ability to choose. And you have compassion for yourself the entire time. Because there are many times as you are moving through the addiction and clearing it, moving out of it, there are many times where you will not be able to choose the action of the higher aspect of you. I'm not going to binge eat. I'm not going to go on a shopping spree. I'm not going to go over to an ex's and have sex, right? I'm not going to go gambling. I'm not going to sit and watch TV for 15 hours and numb out, right? Although TV is such a great tool sometimes. The purpose is that sometimes you're going to choose this being in this higher version, which means that you choose to not do the addiction anymore. You choose to not do it. You're not playing in it anymore, right? And then there's going to be times where you say, screw it, I'm being in it, I'm playing in it, I'm doing it, right? And this back and forth yo-yo, you have to have compassion for yourself. You have to have love for yourself. And again, there are many avenues, treatment programs, courses, teachers that can assist you in clearing addiction. But I am speaking to those of you that are consciously ascending and looking at your ascension from a bigger perspective and wanting to do this from that higher perspective. We're all capable of doing this. We're all capable of clearing addiction, of stepping out of addiction. We can all do this. You just start to frame it and see it as what it is, energy and consciousness, right? That you never wanted to experience, that came into your body, and you decided at that young age or whatever age it was that you were going to numb out and not feel it. And the way you were not going to feel it was through some awesome behavior that you found. And then you recognize that behavior is so amazing and it works so well, you're just going to keep doing it. And then the thought patterns come in that get ingrained as like a thick bicycle wheel or car wheel, right? 4x4 wheel that's in there, and it just is always turning and always controlling you. When anything triggers you externally, you don't even consciously think anymore about it. And then all of a sudden you're in this pattern. You come into the body and you start to feel everything. You feel the dense consciousnesses you never felt. Dense consciousnesses means the consciousnesses that are pain, sorrow, fear, sadness, abuse, neglect, anything that was intense for you that was not easy to digest all the way through your body. I call that dense consciousness. That's going to come up. That's going to come up, especially if you're consciously trying to shift out of an addiction. If you are intending to shift out of an addiction, then get ready for everything to come up. It's already coming up anyway. It's called the Ascension process, right? Where is it in your body? How much love can you have for yourself? How much compassion can you have for yourself? Then, as you're doing all of that, let's get real clear on the power ball right here, the thought patterns. This is the control center, right? You've got to start observing. You've got to start listening, and you got to start recognizing it is a completely different version of you that you're stepping out of. You are looking at yourself in another timeline. Literally, you are looking at yourself in an older timeline. You are being a version of you in an older timeline. That's what you're doing. When you do the addictive behaviors and you're consciously aware and you're consciously shifting out of it and you don't want to be doing it anymore, you are literally looking back from a higher version of you and seeing yourself being in an older timeline. And you're like, this does not resonate. You're doing the behavior and you're saying, this doesn't resonate. You're doing the behavior and you're like, I don't want to be doing this anymore. You're doing the behavior and you're like, what the freak am I doing, right? In this process, how much love can you have for yourself? That is key. That is key. If you hate yourself, if you're getting mad at yourself, if you're yelling at yourself, if you're beating yourself up, that is a very, very dense consciousness. That is a very low frequency to be having while you're trying to do this. It's only going to weigh you down, literally. That consciousness is going to weigh you down. So when you're going back and forth like this, can you have an open heart for you? Can you have compassion? Can you start to understand why this all happened? Can you start to understand how you're navigating this so courageously now? Can you understand that there is absolutely, unequivocally a higher version of you right now that's looking down at that behavior saying, holy shit, good job, girl. Good job really keeping yourself safe. Good job not feeling. Good job. Now we're going to feel everything and we're going to clear this behavior. We're going to clear this addiction. I'm going to recognize every single time that thought pattern, that wheel turns on, that is not me any longer. It's not me any longer. It's me watching a movie from the past. And I have every ability and choice to choose a different pattern, or not pattern, choose a different behavior. Many times these addictions can become so ingrained in us that they are habits that we don't even recognize. Can you start to recognize the triggers when you're bored, when you get irritable, when you get hungry, when you get frustrated, when you get stressed, right? Many times, if you've had addictions for a while, there is very subtle triggers that will push those thought patterns and the wheel starts to go, and the next thing you know, you're doing the addiction. So what are the very subtle triggers, external triggers, that push that go button where the thought pattern starts to move and the wheel, the four-wheel drive wheel thing just goes? That is what you want to pay attention to. That is what you want to observe. And at the exact same time, what are you feeling? What's coming up? Typically, this is like stage 1, right? Recognizing the consciousnesses that are coming up to be loved and seen and felt, the energy center that it's held in, right? That's the first stage. And then this is kind of the second stage where you start to get real clear and become the observer of these thoughts. And you start making different choices. A lot of times when you're still in the feeling of it and the experience of it and the emotions of it and feeling, it's hard to do both, right? So, can you, if this resonates, start to look at addictive behaviors from this perspective, from this lens? Can you practice seeing you from this aspect? Can you love the hell out of yourself for everything that you did in order to survive? There is nothing wrong with having an addiction. It was what you needed to do in order to survive in whatever now moment you needed to survive in. We can't beat ourselves up for having addictions or for anyone else having addictions. That was the way they coped with whatever external experience they were in. And then it became a habit or an addiction. And now, as we are consciously ascending, we are becoming acutely aware that that no longer resonates. Most of you, if you have an addiction, it's not resonating anymore. It's like, oh shit, it is go time. Now I actually have to seriously get rid of this addiction, clear it, step out of it. I want you to visualize it as you're stepping out of it, right? You're stepping out of the old version of you that did it into and being this new version, which requires putting the brakes on that thought pattern, getting conscious and observing it. So hopefully this was helpful. If you have addictions, and if it wasn't helpful, then so be it. Let me know if you have any questions down below. And just be gentle with yourself. You know, we're all navigating this together. And what you're going to start to notice, and what you may already be noticing, it is that we're navigating this from a higher perspective now, right? It doesn't necessarily make sense or feel right, resonate to go to the conventional sort of mainstream ways of dealing with things. Because if you go and sit in front of the doctor, they're going to give you medicine, right? Or something, you're like, God, that doesn't resonate with me anymore. Or you may go into a 12-step program and you start doing that and you're like, God, this just doesn't resonate. How can I heal this addiction when none of the things externally resonate with me anymore? Higher perspective. Understanding how it all occurred. Understanding that it's all energy and consciousness. Understanding that you've done nothing wrong, and all of those individuals that played a part in this behavior and this addiction did nothing wrong. It was all contracts. All the abuse, all the suffering, all the trauma, all the pains, it was all contracts. From a much higher perspective, this is all an Akashic record experience. But for the simple sake of just kind of dealing with the addiction, we don't have to go there, right? But that's why things aren't resonating anymore in terms of the conventional ways of healing addiction. It's like, God, that doesn't work for me. I don't feel resonant with that. Can somebody give me another suggestion, right? And a lot of times when we start moving into higher states of consciousness, it all comes back to us. It all comes back in here. How am I going to do this for me? How am I going to heal this for me? How am I going to move this out through me? You are the one that has to feel it. You are the one that has to experience it. Nobody else can feel it through for you. Nobody else can tell you your thought patterns. Nobody else can stop you in that now and say, hey, that's an older version of you. This is a higher version of you. Can you make another choice? Nobody's doing that for us. It all comes down to us and our sovereign field and learning how to navigate this now on our own. Of course, we have the assistance of all the other humans that we have as support systems, but it always comes back to you. You're the one making the choice. You're the one staying conscious. You're the one loving you. You're the one having compassion for you. You're the one doing this. So, I love you. And all of your behaviors you may have, all of your addictions you may have. You're still deeply loved no matter what. You're just human. That's all. You're just a human. And you did the best you can. I did the best I can. We all are doing the best we can, and we've always tried to do the best that we could when we navigate this dense third dimensional consciousness. And the more we shift, the more we remember this, the more we love ourselves, the more we have compassion for ourselves, the more we remember it's all energy and consciousness, and the more we remember and learn that this is what we're doing, moving out of one way of being into a new way of being. Get conscious, get aware, observe the thoughts, make different choices, and feel. I love you. Mwah. See you next time.